All right. Well, welcome. Chief Data Officer here, David Lerchbacher, also known as Lerch. Many around here call me Lerch, just short for Lerchbacher. I oversee data and analytics for the organization. Not as comedic as these two over here, Reed and David, but I'll try my best. So we're going to walk through fair housing. Like David said, we, the data team and the engineering team, put together an audit for approximately 2,300 random properties across the nation, and just took a look at the impact of fair housing. But really, before we get into that, I thought we would kind of talk a little bit about the why. Should that be changing?
It's just it's a lag. Yeah. It's like we're doing a kung fu movie.
I'm kind of new to this, guys, so bear with me. All right, here we go. All right, so what we're going to talk about today, agenda-wise, is first off, we're going to talk a little bit about the history. So we'll just go through it. I think it's important, again, like I said, to just set up the why we did this audit, what the fair housing tool does. Secondly, we're going to talk about why monitoring is complex and why it's a growing concern today. Lastly, we'll also talk about legislation and the protected classes that we're monitoring out there and keeping an eye on for our customers. Next, we'll just kind of talk a little bit about Fiona, how it works, how we built it, what it does, and why it's always on. And then finally, we'll get into just the results, overall results of the audit itself. All right, just a little bit about the history. It's been around a long time. Fair housing's been around 53 years. And so it's just continuing to get stronger and more harder to monitor. But overall, it's really focused on preventing discrimination and reversing housing segregation. Legislation has struggled in a digital world, more just monitoring digital footprint for new normal sides of business, and overall how complex the digital world is, and just making sure we're crawling and understanding your risk and mitigating that. Next, we've seen recent flare-ups over the last several years, in particular the Facebook settlement in 2019. So I think there's a real appetite for the fair housing tool and product, and you'll see what we mean here in a few minutes with the audit itself. Like I mentioned earlier, the issue is just more and more complex. Back in the day, we just had more offline media, right? Collateral, directories, out-of-home signage, direct mail, etc. And today, things are a little bit more complex with Google ads, Facebook ads, your website, ILS, call tracking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really focused on trying to monitor and understand that entire footprint and make sure that you're minimizing your risk. Why it's a growing concern. This is coming from the National Fair Housing Federation. We're seeing a huge increase in overall reported acts of fair housing discrimination. It's been an 8% increase year over year in 2017, magnitude of 31,000 issues that were reported. As you can see, the protected classes, disability is a huge makeup. 51% of the protected classes, there's some sort of reported discrimination or active discrimination when it comes to fair housing. And then lastly, we see a huge nugget, really. It's almost 84% in rentals or apartments. And so again, another opportunity for us to really focus on what that audit does and what the fair housing tool does. We talked a little about legislation. So it's just not at the federal level. We're seeing a huge impact both at state and even a local level. The laws are always changing, and staying on top of that can be tricky. So just really focusing on making sure we have the right inputs to monitor and understand potential risk on our customers' digital footprint. All right. So Fiona Fair Housing, what we did, I think there's really three key components here. The first one is the data pipeline, understanding and scanning your footprint, understanding what might be at risk, what type of content is out there, be it keywords, text, or even more specific role-based advertising related to Google ads, Facebook ads, et cetera, et cetera. And then also, lastly, the pipeline processes all this data. So it's a mass amount of data, talking big data, big data, right? And then moving into machine learning. So really the tool here is we focused on testing 3 different models, and the winning model we trained just to have a high level of accuracy to detect these type of issues that we're seeing across the fair housing. And then lastly, the engineering team and Fiona, we have a fair housing user interface, right? It gives you the ability to interact and also take action, work with your partners, work with your internal teams to remedy any type of content that might be with an infraction or potential. So that's really what the fair housing tool does. All right, let's get into the audit results. What we did, we scanned 2,352 property websites. We also looked at about 1,100, I'll call it 1,200 Facebook profiles, and another 1,100 Instagram posts. So what that really meant is it gave us the ability to look at these type of property website, an Instagram ad, also an apartments.com description to look for things that might potentially be of risk. And so this is what we refer to as instances in the tool. And again, it's the property website, it's a post, it's the content within apartments.com. Of that, what we've identified of the 2,300 and also the Facebook and Instagram is about a 10% incidence rate. And where we're seeing most of the issues on these random selected properties is really on the website. So you see 4,200 of the 17,000 where we basically flagged some sort of potential issue or literal infraction. Not as much in Facebook and Instagram, but again, we're still seeing some impact there as well. What this means for the property count, we're seeing about 1 of every 3 have some sort of flagged issue for review. So this is an opportunity again to work with your partners or your internal team to work on that content, adjust the content to make sure that you minimize your risk. And that's really it. So any questions, and you can plug them into the Q&A section of the Fair Housing webinar.
Well, I mean, I don't have a lot of questions because I've seen this data a few times and been on the journey, so to speak, for the last couple of years now with this. But I think what people should know is this is based on obviously today, but there's technology, and it's not just Fiona, but that is going to make things, I guess, easier to identify these types of infractions, as you said, risks, warnings. And therefore, the cases, I think the complaints you already mentioned, which was like a 30-something% increase or whatever, is only going to go up more. And, for us, this isn't like any kind of scare tactic. It's just we weren't even aware of the size of the problem. So I think this really helps demonstrate that. And when we first did start really diving into this, we discovered here at Digible that there were plenty of opportunities for us to get better. So we're super appreciative of the work that Lerch has done, and what an education I'll say this has been, and it's to help tee up also our first speaker with Doug. But I'm just kind of emphasizing the fact that I think the problem is even greater than what you're showing here, Lerch.
Right.
And it's going to be super important for people to lean in, so to speak, with their ownership groups, with their marketing teams, with their operators, and really take this seriously and do what they need to in order to kind of improve the picture for their portfolios. So I thought it was great work, and looking forward to seeing more of that as we get further into it.
Thought it'd be creepy if I talked off screen without the camera, so I had to move it. But your first question, Lerch, is from Megan. She asked, of the incidents, what were the typical causes for being flagged?
Actually, it was pretty representative of that kind of the little flag I showed you around disability. So a lot had to do with that protected class and making sure people, content is inclusive of all folks, including people who may have some sort of disability or whatnot. So I think that was probably the biggest one that they came across that stood out.
Yeah, disability is the #1 lawsuit or whatever. Like, that's where the most lawsuits are, according to HUD's most recent data, and yet that's also where we see the biggest issues when it comes to online copy. So the tool is just scanning copy; it doesn't do images or anything at the moment. But
right.
So from a copy flag, that was the most prolific one.
Absolutely.
Then you have one from Vanessa. She's asking, what are the suggestions to help increase compliance?
That's a good one. David, you want to take that one?
Well, we can get into this with Doug, but a lot of it has been the stuff that people are, it's more, as Doug will say, around ignorance. So it's not a lot of the stuff that you guys had uncovered when we got under the hood. It's not intentional. It seems like things where it's just like people just aren't aware, don't know better. So it's using a lot of like words around like family or single or walk or whatever. Like there's just some like really basic words. So you guys in the audience would have seen these lists before, but my first thing would be just make sure you recirculate those go, no go word lists that, you know, any apartment association shares, and you avoid using things like single or family or walk or whatever.
Yep.
Those will eliminate a lot of it. I'd also mention, I was surprised that websites were the #1 flag versus social, but some of that is because the nature of how you guys also did the audit. So for example, you guys only go back a certain number of posts or a certain number of days. So if a property's posting all the time, it's not, when you scan the Facebook or Instagram profiles, it wasn't a total history.
Right. Exactly. It was the last 20 posts that we had for both of them.
Right. So then if from the data, it's like basically what I had seen was 10% of all things posted have some sort of a problem. So 1 out of 10. If you posted 20, that means like maybe you just didn't get hit yet.
Absolutely.
And obviously some properties are worse than others where they get hit more frequently.
Yep. The other thing I would add is just, you know, as you're writing the content and copy, just think about, am I including everybody? Is this inclusive, right? When you use the word active, you know, maybe somebody with a disability could be, you know, they could take that the wrong way. So ultimately just think about, you know, am I inclusive of all when writing this content? I think that's probably the biggest takeaway as you think about writing that content or the ad copy.
Yeah. And Doug's, one of his famous things that really helped me when he came in and did a session for us was he said, would I feel offended? He's just like, put yourself in anybody else's shoe and say like, would I be offended in any reason for reading this? So Katie actually says, do you have a theory on why Instagram was higher than Facebook, for example?
Katie, I do not, unfortunately. That could be a nice takeaway. I would probably, you know, dive into the data and actually look for the trend and understand that. But no real kind of gut why that's sort of happening. It is interesting as well. So sorry, I don't have a better answer.
Yeah, my anecdotal thing would be, I feel like I see a lot more on-site teams that are posting to Instagram versus Facebook. It's just more maybe of that like. Well, just the crowd is more on Instagram and therefore they're posting more frequently there versus Facebook. It seems like we're getting less posts on Facebook overall than what you're getting on Instagram. So someone's more likely on site to use Instagram to quickly post a photo of whatever. So that's what was also interesting to me is that Instagram wasn't as high of incident as the website. And what I had figured was it must be one reason website would be higher is because we're just scanning text and not images. But I'm just saying generally, if the folks aren't as in tune with fair housing on site, and then they're like just freely going around and saying something like, I know we caught something the other day that was about a baseball game. And it was like, make sure that to take the kids out to the baseball game or something
Right.
that ended up getting flagged. And so it's easy to just make a misstep.
Absolutely.
And then we have another one. We have one from Holly that says, is walkability when speaking of location proximity no longer recommended? Would be an alternative since the score is called the walkability score?
Good question. You want to take that one?
Well, I think this is a great one for Doug. Doug does say, Holly, to completely avoid using the word walk if you can. He says nearby or just minutes away or like, 2 blocks down, something like that. So it's funny because I hadn't ever thought about walkability score, but that's as soon as Doug, satellites in from East Texas, we'll ask him about the walkability score and what his take is on that. But I'm pretty sure he would be recommending not to use it. Doug is also very quick to point out, and so are a lot of the attorneys that Reed and I have spoken about with fair housing, very quick to point out that there is a gradient, and each property or management company needs to determine their own risk profile. So, for example, you guys have heard, I was just talking with a local realtor the other day, and they were like, I don't care what my company says, I'm going to keep using master bedroom. And I'm going to keep using walk-in closet until it's, until they force me not to. And so her, she's just got more, she's willing to take that risk versus some others may not be. And then from Courtney, we have you made any recommendations to clients who post floor plans to remove the term master bedroom?
Yeah, master bedroom is not a per se infraction, but we, are looking for folks to kind of shy away from that. I don't know if we specifically have an alternative, maybe main bedroom, but anything you want to add, David, to that?
No, I like main bedroom, or you could get creative with it. Just avoid, again, that negative keyword list from your association. Lerch, you also want to talk a little bit about, we didn't scan Craigslist in this, but just anecdotally, your team had trained a lot of the models up on Craigslist. Do you have anything that you want to add from there?
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing that stands out is some of the smaller organizations, or I guess more mom and pop owners and operators, if you will. I think they walked a line of what you mentioned earlier, is the ignorance, right? They don't, they don't really have as much expertise in writing more, I guess, conservative copy, if you will. So I think that's the biggest thing that really kind of stuck out, is just the more SMB, if you will, of the business side.
Cool. And we have Michelle Smith asking, is steps also included in the walkability terminology?
Yes, it is. Like number of steps too, right? If you're including that kind of falls within that kind of category as well. The other thing, Michelle, this audit didn't take into account, but as we look at Google Ads or things like that, any type of geo kind of boundaries we're putting on, or exclusions of zip code, or other things that we continue to monitor and look at to make sure that we're not excluding a zip code that might be right next to your community.
Courtney, main or primary sounds pretty good. Secondary, do you also then say, what do you do for like the third, fourth?
Tertiary.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate on the fourth.
I will say growing up, my sister definitely got the secondary, and I definitely got the outhouse, I guess is what we would call it. I was like on this other wing of the house, and it was like definitely the worst room. And then when we got, I think I told you guys this, when we got our foreign exchange student, they just put me downstairs in the den that had glass windows. So I had no privacy.
Wow.
I got kicked out of my room for Nikki, our exchange student.
You were Ruprecht from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Steve Martin.
Oh, I don't know that one, but I do know like Harry Potter was more my room.
Okay.
Below the stairs.
That's probably a better comparison.
And Katie, I know you would appreciate Harry Potter. All right. Is Doug about ready? Last thing Katie asked is if you could talk about how we're categorizing warnings and instances for each platform.
Well, generally, I think, Katie, if I'm answering this correctly, it's generally around the protected classes. So that's sort of the hierarchy, right? It starts with age, sex, things of that nature. And from there, it's really the content or the keyword groupings that we segment underneath those that really, and how that hierarchy rolls up. But again, it's really focused on the protected classes. And the last thing I'll say is, for the fair housing tool, we also could look at things like master or specific to our customers' needs. And so we have some customization we can do around what other words they might want to look at. So there's sort of an other bucket as well that we really look at for our customers. And that's, again, more customized.
All right, cool. Well, we appreciate all the questions, and Lerch, thanks for pulling all the data. Yeah. And I think this audit was maybe 3 or 4 iterations ago of your algorithm too. So maybe back in like July or something.
Right, end of July we ran it. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it'll be really interesting, and we can talk to Scott about this. But Scott obviously is monitoring fair housing policy across the country to see what happens. So,
right.
In the months ahead, and certainly by next year, we'll have a lot more enhancements to that algorithm in any future audits you run.
Absolutely. The more data we push through it, the better it's going to get, smarter it's going to do. So thank you. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right. Are we doing our 60-second break again?